Agenda is listed. I'll post it here.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Pooja. I will post the agenda here in the Zoom. I don't see any new additions to it, so we can get right into things here. Okay, first up on the agenda, we had some discussions last week about Gatsby, its adoption versus Docusaurus. We decided to go with Gatsby, and it looks like there is a PR in flight, courtesy of Acolyte, to make the switch back to Gatsby. Great work. Anything we need to discuss here, or is it just a matter of peer reviewing it and getting it merged?
As far as I know, it's ready for final review. I know that Mercy added a couple things, just cleaned up some of the naming on the sidebar, and Zane has made a few changes for us on the generator side to make it a little easier to manage, so it's not quite as hacky as it was when I first did it. So I feel pretty good about it at this point, just in terms of like getting everything up and running and kind of back using the generator code as opposed to the where we have now with that old PR or the old plugin from Docusaurus. So
awesome. Great. So we just need review and merging.
I will note that the tests are not passing, but that's because of the eSimulate PR that Felix merged a few weeks ago. That the tests weren't passing on that when he merged it, and so that's not the fault of my PR. I think I did clean up the spell check stuff just because that was easy to do. But
so that's curious. All right.
Like they were, if you look at the PR that Felix merged, the tests were failing there too. So I haven't looked at that. I think there might even be a PR to fix that. I haven't looked closely at that yet. That's kind of like a day 2, day 3 kind of thing for me once this is done.
Yeah, the issue, Mike tiled light client about it. I noticed about the spec check. I don't know how he was able to merge without the whole thing running, but I think Killary made a PR in respect to that. So I guess if it gets merged, the thing will clear up, and then we can look into the spec check itself.
Okay. That's slightly worrisome. We should probably do something about that. I don't know if anybody has any background on like kind of what happened here, but yeah, merging and breaking the build for future users is suboptimal.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Simulate PR had just been sitting there for 18 months, and there was some conversation, and Felix was just like, it has to get merged now. And
Yeah.
it's not really great that it broke things.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened.
That's probably the context.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that needs to be unbroken ASAP, I guess.
Yeah, and I can take a look at that once this is done. I mean, this is the only major docs PR that I'm going to do. There's another one. I have another one, just like some more DevX kind of improvements for down the line. Like they're not as important. Like this, if we get this merged, it cleans up the table rendering issue in the eSimulate docs, and it updates it puts us on the right thing with the OpenRPC generator and fixes the spell check. So I can take a look at that other broken test after this, maybe alongside working on spec check itself, since I'm starting to think about that.
What a segue.
Sorry, one other question on the docs.
Yeah.
Is the long-term goal to stay on Gatsby, or was there some plan to switch to Doc Source again in the future when more of the plugins or infrastructure is updated?
I think that's a
I
Zane.
guess long-term goal, according to what Open RPC said.
It's a long-term goal for the OpenRPC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have I think, Zane, you're on, right? You want to talk to it?
Yeah.
You mentioned something about it in chat.
Sure. So like it's on a roadmap for this upcoming year to overhaul the documentation generation. So it's just like and it seems like a lot of people are kind of on this kind of Docusaurus tip. And so the idea is that we'll probably lean towards developing something that looks more along the lines of like Netlify, um, but with a docusource base, and like just cleaning all of that up. But the Gatsby is just kind of a, hey, look, let's make sure that we're tracking the changes in the OpenRPC like ecosystem, because we like overhauled a lot of the underlying things, and then you won't be able to support extensions and other code fixes. So this will just get you tracking. Yeah.
Sounds
So it's a
reasonable.
Okay, sounds
stopgap
good.
until
I'll take a look at the PR for Gatsby.
Thank you, Light Client.
I'll get merged today.
Awesome. Awesome. So next up, spec check. We had an outstanding question about spec check. There was a little bit of some brokenness that sounds like folks are looking into, and also a question as to whether or not it needs to be integrated into the local build processes that developers use, as well as CI. So can anyone elaborate on the question and figure out what exactly needs to be done here? It sounds like it's just kind of open up a couple of issues and, sort out some of the CI/CD infrastructure. Does that sound reasonable?
So a couple of comments. So the CI for the does use spec check. It runs it. It's not. I don't think it's integrated in any of the package JSON scripts for local use. I think you have to actually manually install it and run it. I think it's not hard. It's not. We just don't have a script set up to do it. And that's not. I could add that. It would be relatively straightforward to do.
Awesome.
So in and of itself, it's not hard to use. It's already running on the CI, so which is why the test job fails, because it runs the spec check and there's a broken simulate test. I think the bigger question, and here again, I know that like Client mentioned, when in our chat, Justin, that you and I had with him about, is I guess there's certain things when it's validating, when it validates against the spec against those the generated tests. I think it's not validating if something's not present that maybe should be or something. I've just started looking at that this last week, and so so it's not that it validates, if elements that are there, it validates. But my impression is from looking at it is like if an element is not present, it doesn't necessarily fail that that test. It just ignores it. I think that's so here again. Some of that goes back to the underlying code that like Client put in there that actually compares the schema against the test output, and that's not a simple matter to solve for. I'm still learning kind of how the OpenRPC spec is put together versus the libraries that actually do the spec, because it's not custom code. I think like Client, you're using that JSON schema validation library from it's a Go one. He's on there's a newer version of it, and then there's anyway. So it's just some work that needs to be done to. It also looks like we're not validating against the correct version of the scheme. I don't know. It's a lot of like down a rabbit hole kind of stuff. It's not bad as is. It's not 100% perfect.
So what I'm hearing is that this isn't necessarily a challenge with spec check itself. It's just the tests that the authors are writing lack negative testing.
No, I think that spec check doesn't validate. For example, I think the one that the light client pointed out was in the 7702 test. Like you're supposed to have a certain, like there's an element in the JSON for the transaction, for the 7702 transaction, you're supposed to pass in a data field. And if it's not present, that's an invalid. It should be rejected by the RPC. But that field element's not there, and spec check doesn't highlight that as it should be a required field, and it's not highlighting it as a required field as an example. I think that's what I understood from looking through that.
Understood. Yep. Great.
Is that right, like Client? Am I describing it correctly? That like at least in that one instance you highlighted, it was just like spec check's just not catching that there's a missing field element.
Yeah, I think that's the issue on that specific one. I'm not sure if there's other classes of issues that spec check doesn't catch.
Right.
There's kind of a lot going on there. There's the compilation of the various YAML files into OpenRPD into a single file, and then conversion of that,
Right.
or creating the OpenRPC file of all of those methods and schemas. So there's
Right.
this assembly phase, which could have something problematic in it. Then there's the uh, trying to like parse and read the individual schemas from that assembled thing. And then there's the trying to validate it against a specific JSON value that's coming in a test. So there's
Right.
a lot of point, and then verifying the schema has like very specific schemas that it can follow or not follow. So there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm not sure exactly which parts could be having problems with it.
Yeah, and that I've started looking at that, but I haven't, like I said, I haven't gotten very deeply
Yeah.
into it yet. So that's on my to-do list.
Just out of curiosity, does SpecCheck have its own repo? Is this another project we should maybe keep an eye on during these calls and address open issues and PRs and things like that?
It's in the repo RPC test, Jim.
Cool, thank you. Okay, yeah, I remember seeing this now. All right, nice. I'll add that to the pre-work for these calls to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. Okay,
So I have something to say.
good.
So we looked into this. I remarked and I noticed that for some reason the test runs after, like, it's supposed to check on the PR that's been opened. It doesn't run on it. It checks on the previous state of the repo. That's how it's been. It goes. Because the issue with the it simulate issue was because block state calls, it has like a boundary response, which turns into a slice that now returns JSON array in the result. So now we're having like a single object. You're supposed to have a single object, but we are having like an array. So that was what the issue that was like the issue from the it simulate side. But when I brought it up to Mika, they noticed that it wasn't checking on the current PR that was opened. It was on the previous state of the repo. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, good catch then. I guess we'll have to take a look at the GitHub actions to investigate that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the steps now, and it looks like it's, yeah, I can look at that again because it's supposed to run on every P. If it's not checking out the right, I don't know. I'll have to look at that a little bit.
Cool. Thanks, Mercy. All right. Speaking of PRs, we have a number of PRs on the agenda here that have kind of been sitting there for a little bit. Overall, we have a lot of open PRs, I think, in this repo. I don't know how many. It's too many. I'd love to hear thoughts from people on that. I don't know how old is too old. I'd love to hear thoughts on that as well. Folks are going to start showing up to these calls and advocating for specific RPCs that they care about and that they want us to include. We should be prepared for that. And we should also have some sort of mechanism, not mechanism, but we should just have some sort of habits of making sure that the PRs that are open get regular feedback so community members have an idea of where they are in our process. So I guess generally, anybody have any thoughts on that before we start picking apart individual PRs?
Yeah, I think I've said this before, but until we get SpecCheck working consistently, then it's hard to make much progress on the PRs because we don't know if what we're merging is actually working and correct. So it feels a little bit like this is a blocker for making serious progress on the open PRs.
And you don't think that there's anything like what would be the second issue that you would want resolved after that if we can just hand wave away the spec check thing?
I think that there are a lot of PRs that can be closed or PRs that are easy merges that maybe don't necessarily affect the spec. So if we're trying to get that number down, there are things that it can do. I just
Okay.
think that there's quite a few fix PRs, and we don't even know if the fix is working.
Hmm.
And there's also a lot of PRs of endpoints that people are proposing that we can't really make a decision on because it's not our decision. It's like the all core devs decision. And so the question is like, should we just keep those around forever? Should we close them at some point? I think if they're a year old, it's probably fine to close.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So after we get spec check corrected, integrated with CI/CD, we have a better sense of which of these PRs are actually failing or passing. We can triage the things that are not requiring ACD review, and yeah, I can imagine that reduces the backlog quite a bit. All right, sounds like a plan. So in light of that, should we not talk about open PRs until spec check stuff is fixed?
I mean, personally, I'm gonna just say, like, I don't know how long it's gonna take me or whoever to get all that ironed out. So I mean, like, to at least not. I know it's more work a little bit, but I mean, I think it's fruitful to at least have these conversations. Otherwise, we're just gonna get bogged down by, oh, a code blocker keeps us from at least coming to an agreement. Like, we can comment on PRs, like, like the two that you have listed. Like, let's talk through those. If everyone's on board with those, we can at least like add a label to them on the repo saying, hey, these are merge ready, so that as soon as collective effort gets spec checked to the point where we're satisfied that it's working correctly or some equivalent replacement, we can just merge those PRs. I mean, like, otherwise, I feel like it's the same problem that happens with ACD. I think people just get bogged down. I mean, I don't. Because like the error codes, like, that's a valuable thing that should get done, and that's partially already done. I mean.
Okay. Anyone else?
Very quick, unrelated question. For the building, the Gatsby docs, what version of node do we need?
You can use any of the latest beyond 20 works. So you can use like 22, 24.
Okay.
So like all of that is like fixed, like because it was in a bad state before. And then the update I did about 4 or 5 months ago that put the ecosystem back in a good state.
All
That
right.
is a hot mic next to an impressive keyboard. Thank you. All right. Okay, so cool. Shall we start talking about the PRs then? We have two that are on the agenda here. The first one is interesting, adding timestamps to log receipts. It looks like Geth has already adopted this.
I recall someone adding this, but I have to look to remember.
Yeah. So in theory, that means that Geth is ahead of the RPC spec on this one. And so we need to catch up to them so we can fill tests. Am I am I conjecturing here, or is this an accurate problem statement?
I don't really remember what happened when we brought it up on ACD. I kind of recalled people were in favor, but we would likely want to just make sure that that was the case.
Okay.
And if so, hit the merge button. But there are also no tests for this. So someone needs to add tests.
Sorry, which one is that? I'm lost.
It's the add block timestamp to log PR 639.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, it looks like Geth did merge this.
Okay. Once we get tests at least to cover this, then we can put it on an ACDE agenda for approval.
I think it was put on ACD agenda, and we just need to go look at the recording to double check that it was accepted.
Hmm. Okay, I can take that as an action item. I'll go dig through the archives and see if it's already been sorted. Okay, ready to talk about error codes? There's an interesting issue posted here. It's issue 658. This was presented on a prior RPC Standards call, which I'm sure there's a recording of somewhere. Unclear as to what proposed next actions we should pursue.
Yeah. Hi, I can go over what happened in the last 2 weeks. We had a couple of syncs with Zane and Mercy, and we also reviewed community feedback from Mercy. She put together a document that was helpful. So the outcome is we are kind of aligned. Mercy, please keep me honest. We think it looks good. There's just one more thing I need to do. After talking to Zane last week, we are planning to add ranges to reserve the error codes. That is still pending. But once that's done, I think it'll be in a good shape. There's one more thing that I wanted to bring up was after the Docusaurus changes are merged, I would be able to test this out and keep it ready, probably by next meeting, so we can make an action item out there.
Okay. Thank you, Simpson.
Of course. And yeah, of course, any more feedback, really happy to get and take a look at it. But I think it is actually in a decent state. If you want to get merged, I just need to clean up the PR a little bit, make it more relevant, and add the ranges properly. And then once that's merged, I can start working on the test and downstreaming it to Hive tests if needed, whatever works.
Very cool. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's it for our agenda. Does anybody have any new business? The floor is open.
Hey, Justin, Bastian from Alchemy. Sorry, I joined slightly late.
Oh, hey.
Hey, I've been looking at the recordings, but I never had the chance to make this time, so I'm glad I could join. Thanks for all the work you guys are doing. I plan on joining the future ones, by the way. I think this is like super helpful to kind of help on our end, kind of follow up with what's going on the status side. Did you have a chance to talk about the timestamp and what was blocking us there in terms of merging it into the execution APIs? If you had, that's certainly on me because I joined 10 minutes late and I'm happy to watch the recording.
We did talk about it. You're specifically referring to adding the timestamps to the log receipts, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's already been merged into Geth, so it's kind of sort of available there. What's waiting on us is we need to add some tests around it because it's really just kind of YOLO'd in there. And then we
Yep.
also have some CI/CD issues that we want to shore up before we start pulling in PRs more aggressively. So we know what the clear next actions are there, and it's pretty close to the top of the list for next things to be worked on.
Nice. That's great. Maybe a call out, and I'm sure you're aware. The latest release of Geth, the timestamp itself got converted to was hex encoded. So just something to keep in mind as you add the test. It basically, when it got shipped like 2 weeks ago, it was just a Unix timestamp. And now it's hex encoded as of I think 4 or 5 days ago. Whenever the latest release of Geth was shipped. So, just yeah, something to keep in mind.
Yeah, it was fixed in 1.16.1, which was released last week. So if someone fills
Yeah.
tests, it should come through as hex now.
Sweet, yeah, that works. I was just wondering if we had been writing the test base, assuming it'd be just a Unix or just a number, that test would probably break right now. Well, most
Yeah.
certainly would break.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to fill it. Interesting. Do we have opinions on why you're using hex there?
I actually wasn't involved. I mean, I was involved in the block timestamp, talked to Sina and the Geth team about having it in, and they were super receptive about shipping it, which was great. In terms of like the format itself, I think Matt, you might have more context here on this one. I don't. I think it's more so to have alignment with the other fields that are hex encoded.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In like JavaScript, you can only represent, 62 bits or whatever. And so we have always encoded all integers as hex because many integers in the protocol can be larger than that.
Yeah.
And timestamp, it's not really much of a concern of it overflowing that size, but for consistency, we just encode all integers as hexadecimal.
Good enough.
That makes sense. I actually don't know what Reth does. I mean, they added it like a while back, that field. I would need to check what they do, but I think, yeah, again, for consistency, hex works fine. So just something to keep in mind, Justin. I'm not sure who's updating the test. I'm also happy to help here. I'm just need maybe a few pointers. But yeah, again, something to keep in mind.
I don't know if anyone right now is owning that, but if you are interested in getting this merged to the repo, I think it wouldn't be too difficult to update these tests. Basically, the way the tests are generated, and all this information is in the execution API's repo. If you go to, I think it's docs. Yeah, if you go to, no, not docs.
Contributors?
One second. So there, wait. Man, I don't know. Something got deleted from the main. The making changes.md file got deleted.
There we go. Zane just shared a link. I'm happy to have a look at that.
Yeah, so if you take a look at that, it'll kind of describe basically what you need to do. Since this isn't, yeah, the way that the type of method that this is and the field that's being added, it will automatically show up if you just refill the test. So you don't even need to go in and generate new tests because you're just exposing information about the timestamp that already exists. So if you're able to load the latest version of Geth and load the latest version of RPC TestGen and fill for the methods that are related to the receipt, then you will the diff should just show you that the block timestamp is added.
So can I
That's
say
the main block.
something?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, the repo you're supposed to go into is the RPC test gen, not exactly this the execution API, because whatever you regenerate from the RPC test gen gets automatically filled to the execution API.
Sorry, was there a question or is that a statement?
Statement.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, look, I mean that works for me. I'll have a look at the README, and if not, I can figure it out. If not, reach out. Is that the main blocker? Once we have that in, like we basically can merge it in the execution APIs.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
I think that's the main blocker.
Sweet. Okay, that works for me.
Awesome. Good news. Welcome to the call.
Thanks, Justin.
Anybody else have anything they want to discuss? The floor is yours. If not, we can give people some time back.
So I want to share the this PR that I shared on the staff on the
Sure.
chat.
The
444.
RPC test gen 1, yeah. Okay. Do you have specific things that you need feedback on, or are you just waiting for a general review, Mercy?
I'm waiting for Jerry from my clients. I don't know if you can take a look and then
Okay.
you can hear from the it.
Okay, I'll include that on the agenda that that's outstanding and needs to be looked at. Thank you. All right. Well, if that's all we have, going once, going twice, we can wrap the call here and see y'all on Discord.
See you on Discord. Thanks, Justin, for running these. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.